Sure, no, happy to. So in this sense, the cultural groups that my colleague Catherine Covarola and I were identifying were faculty and administration. So an administrator could be, for instance, a dean, a provost, a president. If you're in a that's a higher education setting. If you're in a public school setting, it could be, for instance, teachers compared with principal, superintendent. So there's automatically a tension and a dynamic there, but it really grew out of a relationship that I have with Dr. Covarola, where we would be sitting at the table in different meetings, experiencing the same conversations together, and yet our perspectives were very different. So I'm a faculty member, she at the time was a dean, and then we would have conversations about it, and truly from a place of curiosity. Oh, that's so interesting. Tell me more. How did that? Da, da, da. And we would just have these conversations. And over 5 years, we interviewed many faculty and administrators. We sent out lots of surveys, and we recognized that this tension is so prevalent and unfortunately impacts negatively the environments that everyone's working in. So we thought, well, gosh, it really truly seems like people just don't understand each other. So it's almost as if they're speaking completely different languages, which is actually sort of especially interesting, I guess, because many administrators were previously faculty members. So we thought if we approach it through the lenses of intercultural communication or intercultural theory, how could we then think about this a little differently? And we both also have a background in psychology, so that was an interesting additional lens to look through. And so what we really started, we had two main ideas. We had this metaphor, if you will, of a journey. So if you're traveling to a foreign place, someplace unfamiliar, what would you bring with you? You know, what would the currency be? Who would be your guide? What map or other way of navigating the territory would you have? How would you know what was important? What happens if you get lost? All of these kinds of metaphorical associations for how we would literally feel in a meeting, in a department setting where we were unfamiliar with that territory, etc. And then we also identified different cultural topics, I guess, to really investigate a little bit. So what are the resources that each cultural group values? You know, how do you know, and what are those resources? What are the traditions that each group holds dear? How does governance work in institutions or communities, depending on where you're looking, whatever the context is? And what's the territory? So those four broad areas were the areas that we started to address, and then we developed case studies based on the very, very common occurrences that we noticed and learned about just over and over again. So it was sort of comical as we were writing up fictional case studies, we were chuckling, thinking that someone might think, oh, they're writing about me, because they're so common that anyone can imagine sitting in many of these different settings. But our hope is that people will cultivate the capacity to really understand the perspective of an other, whatever the other is. And that takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of comfort being confused, some humility, recognizing, oh, I thought I knew this, but oops, I made a mistake. So, you know, that's what we hope. And we sure learned a lot through the process of writing. I'm very grateful for the process, because I know that I learned a lot. And I know that in my own work setting now, I will watch incidents as they're unfolding, and I really do process them a lot differently, with a lot more compassion, I think, for the players involved.
Mm.